Well, hello there. I'm Mama Jane's husband, and this is
Mama Jane.
And we are currently cruising off South Africa on Norwegian Dawn. And before we set sail, we had a few days in Cape Town. And on one of those days, we visited Robben Island. Is that how you pronounce it, Mama Jane?
I don't know if it's Robben, it's spelt with an E, but do you say Robbins? I don't know. But anyway, you know where we mean, the island where Nelson Mandela and many other people famously was held prisoner for many years.
Yeah. So if that interests you, watch on. So, Mama Jane, we had an interesting visit.
We did. It's one of those places that if you're in South Africa, if you're in Cape Town, you really ought to go because whatever your political views are, it is of interest. And it was quite an amazing place. To get there, we went by taxi from our hotel, and we were dropped off at the sort of pick-up points for the what do you call it?
The V&A waterfront.
That's the V&A waterfront.
Yeah.
And we were dropped off near where the boat leaves to go across to Robben Island.
And it's well signposted.
Yeah, very well signposted.
There's a good drop-off place, and there is also, don't miss the selfie that you can take of Table Mountain. And from this place, top tip in South Africa, all good selfie points, they have a yellow rectangle for you to stand in.
I think they do that in lots of places.
Do they? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they do.
So then you walk up some steps from the drop-off point, through some sort of shopping place, and then down steps the other side. So all very well signposted.
Very lovely things to look at.
Yeah.
Beautiful statues and art stuff. So, and then you go into a big building that is called, I think it's called Ferry Terminal. I think
it's like Nelson Mandela
Terminal
Gateway building.
Oh, that's right, Gateway building.
Gateway building.
So you go in there and you're very organised. You go through security. Now it does say on the door you need identification with you. This can be a driving licence or a photograph of your
Probably
passport.
photo ID.
Yeah, photo ID.
Yeah. Not sure why.
Oh, I think I know why. Anyway, yeah. So you do that. It's very easy, and then you're onto the boat. It's a big boat.
Big ferry.
Big ferry. Now,
they tell you to get there 45 minutes before you are due to leave, and you see this huge queue forming. There's no real advantage being at the front of that queue, I don't think, unless you want a pic of your seat. Now, it is an enclosed ferry, so it's not that easy to take photos or anything from the ferry. As you get to the terminal, you'll see a big queue. Don't panic, you'll get on the boat. But what is worth doing rather than queuing, I think, is having a look around at the exhibition they've got there, which shows the sort of a brief history of South Africa from the arrival of the first Westerners in the 15th century, but also the Chinese arrived in the 15th century as well. Weren't aware of that. So it gives you a good understanding of the background of South African history since colonialism started and the advent of apartheid, and then the struggle. Gives you some key moments and everything. So that's really good, actually. Really, really well done.
The ferry is comfortable, the proper seats and everything. It's not benches and things. But one thing, it was very rough when we were crossing. And on there are like television screens around giving the story of South Africa. And there's writing, you can read it, as well as the spoken word. If you are prone to seasickness or motion sickness of any kind, I would advise that you don't read it. Close your eyes and listen, but don't read it, because that is likely to make it worse. It made you.
It is.
And he's not seasick.
I never get seasick.
No.
I never get motion sickness. Fairly robust, really. Both of us are fairly robust. but I had to shut my eyes
Yeah.
and just because I felt sick.
Yeah.
And I don't normally.
And we think it was the reading. It's sort of if you're travelling in a car and you're trying to read a book and you feel sick, well, it's the same kind of
I
thing.
can normally read in the car.
Yeah.
When I'm not driving. When Mama Jane's driving, I'm usually doing stuff on my phone and reading and all sorts. I once booked a cruise as a passenger, so you know, it is.
Moving on.
Moving on. Anyway.
So you get to Robben Island,
Yeah.
and you are met by. You get off the ferry. You then walk to a coach, and you get on a coach. Now, when you're coming back, you don't come back to the ferry on the coach, but that's just the way the tour is. So you set off and you stop at different places, don't you, for different things.
So they take you on a bus tour of the island, basically.
Yeah.
And one of Robben Island's best kept secrets is there's a penguin colony, and you might get lucky and see penguins. Some of our party did see penguins. I didn't. A group I was with were pointing saying they could see penguins, and I took photos, but I didn't get any penguins on the photos. I did get what's the other bird? Anyway, it's often mistaken for a penguin, so we may or may not have seen penguins.
Who knows?
But the penguins themselves. So but our first stop, I think, our second stop, we went to this part of the island where they kept prisoners who they wanted to keep away from other prisoners, basically. And it's a very small compound, and you can see the rows of cells where they wanted to keep people really isolated. And then we went and saw this outcrop, I would describe it, where there was a little cafe, and you could get a drink, and they were selling some sandwiches, and you could, on a clear day, get a really great selfie of Table Mountain, we were told, but actually it wasn't a very clear day, and we couldn't even see Table Mountain for most of it, but apparently it was there. It was just deep fog and mist around. It did clear a bit, and I did get a glimpse of it. But you can get there's some good wildlife around. That's where the penguins are, and also some herons, and some cheeky seagull type creatures. Always cheeky seagull type creatures, aren't there? And I had a kind of Coke there, with a nice little stop there. There are toilets there, although I didn't need the facilities, and a good stop, a really good stop. And so it was this unspoiled beauty, really. Yeah, it was good. And then we got back on and we went to a quarry.
Yeah, a quarry where the prisoners used to quarry. Yeah, by hand.
Hard labour. And you could see the cave that they used to shelter in for a break. And there's a stack of stones that after they'd all been freed, they had a sort of moment back in the quarry, and they built this pile of stones to represent the diversity that exists in South Africa. And Nelson Mandela laid a stone, and then others laid a stone on it. So it's quite a symbolic pile of stones, really. And then we went off to the main camp itself, didn't we?
We did, and that is like any other prison camp, I suppose, if you've ever been to one. It's sort of set out in rows and different areas, and in the middle is the exercise area where they were allowed to play tennis and football and cricket, I think. But it's in that area where they managed to do a lot of the smuggling of paperwork, political documents that they were writing, and really quite a risky thing to do, but they managed to do quite a bit of it.
They did.
Yeah. The guards, the guides generally are ex-prisoners. And so Peter was the one we had, and he was a very lovely man, and obviously greatly affected by
Yeah.
what had been there.
He was imprisoned at 18.
Yeah, and but it was interesting to hear him talk about, you know, the whole setup, and
He'd lived it.
he'd lived it.
He
He'd lived
spent
it.
9 years
Yeah,
there,
he'd not
didn't he?
not read a book about it. He was that man. He, been there.
So that was very interesting, very sad as well, of course. But we had a look around the dormitories, the cells, Nelson Mandela's cell. We're still processing it, aren't we? We're still mentally processing the place and what it represents. And I think the thing is, because we went there, but also the whole of our visit to South Africa, we've talked to so many different people from different parts of South African culture, who've all told us their angle on what's going on in South Africa. The whole part of it, we're still processing in our brains, really.
When I say we talked to them about nothing, we weren't speaking to them from a political point of view. We were just speaking to them, you know.
Just let them talk.
Just let them talk. And they weren't trying to persuade us one way or another whether it was right
just
or
telling
wrong.
us about
just
their
telling
lives.
us about it, you know.
And we've had numerous conversations with people who live in South Africa, tour guides and taxi drivers. They're always good for a laugh, aren't they? Good for information. So we've got this sort of mosaic view of what's going on, and still processing it all, aren't we, Mama Jean? It's
very complex.
Very complex.
Very complex.
Very complex, South Africa. So so we got back on the boat, didn't we? The ferry, and it took us back to the Robben Island Gateway. And you come out a different way than you go in, because the next lot are waiting to get on the ferry to take you all across. And then you're back in the beautiful V&A waterfront. Now we will make a separate video about the V&A waterfront, because it's a Faberuni area and worthy of your visit. But I think that's
it for now.
Have you got anything else to say, Mama?
No, that's it.
That's it then. So it's a goodbye from
me.
And it's a goodbye from bye-bye.
Bye.